The next session that we're going to have is actually Lisa Simon from Revelio Labs. She's a chief economist there, and she's going to share some insights on analysis they've done, looking at insights from hundreds of millions of online resumes to help really help reveal kind of AI adoption, and what roles and sectors, right, are we really seeing it show up more. And so I am going to just turn this right over to Lisa. Come on up. All right. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for that great introduction. I feel like that was already a very good summary of what I wanted to talk about today. So my name is Lisa. I'm with Revelio Labs. We're a workforce intelligence company. So if you're not familiar with us, clicker works, you can go back. If you're not familiar with us, we do workforce intelligence. So we're all about the external workforce data and benchmarking. So you all know very well what you look like internally, right? But if you wanted to know what your largest competitors look like on all of these metrics in terms of headcounts, attrition, turnover, we can do that with Revelio data and so much more. And I'm really excited to present to you actually this little, what started out really as a pet project of my own, and we have recently sort of turned into a product for understanding AI exposure and adoption at companies. So my little agenda for today is first just introduce this concept of what do we mean when we say AI exposure as well as adoption, and what that looks like in organizations. Where can AI have really a transformative impact on your organization? Then we'll sort of dive into a case study, and that really showcases the value of having standardized data and taxonomies to really do this and really anything else from a competitive benchmarking lens. So, you really have to all put everything down to the same language and translate to, similar job titles and taxonomies to do apples to apples comparisons. And then we'll do a little bit of navel gazing and see where does people analytics fall on the AI exposure and adoption matrix in terms of where is it that you're really gaining from adopting AI, and where is it maybe distracting or just a little bit too far on the hype train. So what do I mean when we say AI exposure? In and of itself, it's really not a new idea. It's this idea that we decompose jobs into their atomical parts. And atomical parts of jobs to us, and really to anyone that does job construction or job analysis, are activities, right? So a bundle of activities is a job. And then you can look at every single activity of a job and understand to what extent can this be done using AI or not. And it's not really about replacing activities with AI. It's more about augmentation, and you can make this better with AI. We mean generative AI. Your ChatGPTs or really any type of AI tools out there. It's really not a new idea. In the labor economics space that I'm from, we've been doing that to try to understand the impact of technologies for a really long time, and people do that using ONET most of the time. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with ONET or DOT, its predecessor. But it's kind of static, so it doesn't really, you can't really get into company-specific insights or do competitive benchmarking with it because it just doesn't have the flexibility to do that. And this is what we're proposing here. So why should you care, and why does this matter to people analytics? I think a lot of what we try to understand in people analytics is really who does work and how does work get done. And I think AI sort of fundamentally changes some of those dynamics of who does work and how does it get done. So what does make people more productive? Where is it actually making people so much more productive that you could potentially plan for fewer headcounts? Where is it really disrupting? Where it may be actually displacing a few people? And where is it distraction? So where is it just sort of hype and not actually that helpful to focus on? And I think all of these considerations really should play into your strategic workforce planning, into your learning and development. So, if we find that people aren't adopting technology at the rate where it would be helpful to them, then that's something that you can, consider for learning and development to get people to where they need to be. So how do we do this? How does this work? And to understand that, we need to take a step back and really understand how do we get at these work activities, right? So I mentioned ONET, which is sort of one, the dictionary of activities that existed out there. But we want to do something that's more flexible than that, and that's really sort of very custom to every single job posting company out there that exists. And so what we start out with, sort of the input data that we're working with, looks like this. So these are two sources of work activities. One is from a resume, from a LinkedIn profile, essentially the person describing their job essentially at Bristol-Myers Squibb, and then also just a job posting with the requirements of that job. So how do we take these activities and turn them into something that's actually scalable that we can use and learn something from that? So essentially we turn that unstructured text and every single sentence into a hierarchical and structural activity taxonomy. I could go into very much detail of how we actually do that. If you do want to learn more, come talk to me. I'm happy to do it. Let's just say we turn text into numbers, cluster them, and then label them. And then you're sort of left with, basically being able to map every single raw sentence into one that's standardized and fits into this taxonomy. So we have here, for example, business operations, which then fans out into different sentences that describe work activities, and at the more granular level you have analyze financial data for compliance insights, for example, or for data analysis. You can go deeper here as well, and we do that for all jobs, every job, and we think that with the most granular of something like 2,000 activities, we can basically describe all the activities out there that people do. So then, armed with that, we can ask ChatGPT for every single activity, do you think you can do this better than a human, yes or no? And then we're basically left with this classification. This is just a little snapshot of what this gives. You have to sort of wrangle it a little bit so that it doesn't think that it can actually administer healthcare better than a nurse. So you need to rein it in a little bit. But once you parameterize it well enough, it actually works really, really well in terms of just telling you this yes, this no. So we see here collect and analyze data and make reports. That's probably something that you can help with. But yeah, so communicate with patients in a healthcare setting, we probably leave to the professionals and the people that know best. So then, what does this look like at a just job level? Which jobs in the economy as a whole are the most exposed in terms of AI exposure? And unsurprisingly, it's the ones that are really, really high in software engineering, finance, so everyone who deals with data, who does a lot of coding, of course also a lot of writing, but it's really more the IT jobs that are really high in activities that can be really, help with ChatGPT in particular. For anyone in here that does a lot of coding, I mean, it just solves problems so much faster in terms of debugging your code than anything else. So I think this resonates with a lot of people. And then on the flip side, the medical reps, the coaches, the restaurant managers, these are people that, obviously don't have high shares of activities that could be. But they're not at zero either, right? So there's the restaurant manager still has a few % of activities that could be outsourced. The flip side of exposure is adoption. So this is sort of all a little bit useless if we don't know what people are actually doing in terms of their workflows and adopting AI. So how we do this is essentially the same mechanism. We look at people's descriptions and how they write about their job, and have a long list of almost 1,000 or so tools that we look out for keywords, whether people mentioning these keywords in their job descriptions. So this doesn't 100% pick everything up, but I think it sort of directionally tells us really where people are adopting AI versus not. So the data scientists, top of the list here. Unsurprisingly, the cashiers at the bottom of the list aren't adopting as fast. And then this is sort of the most exciting bit here, I think, is what we're left with is this AI productivity matrix. So we are juxtaposing the AI adoption with the exposure on the different axes. So people here on I don't know how well you can see the colors on the screen, but the blue are people that are high adoption, high exposure. The software engineers, the researchers, scientists. These are people that are making themselves more productive because they have a lot of propensity in their jobs of doing so, and they're already adopting, right? So they're already sort of ahead of the curve and really where they need to be. Then the red are really the interesting ones because they're high exposure, low adoption. So these are people that could actually be doing a lot more, but currently aren't. So we're seeing legal and security on there. So of course, there's different reasons why people might not be adopting, but I think it's interesting to bear in mind that just looking at their job composition, they could be doing a lot more. So then, this is a general overview of the labor market. Let's actually look like what this looks like if we dive into a particular company and do this with a custom taxonomy. We've done this on the case of NVIDIA, a client of ours that we've worked with. And the crux here that I do want to mention is that we actually have a custom taxonomy. So this is a new product that we have with Revelio that essentially we don't have to rely on the general taxonomy because it doesn't go granularly enough in all the levels that it needs to. But maybe I'll just skip ahead to that slide here. We can really dive into where it matters for NVIDIA to be very granular, and then we can be less granular in the other places where we don't need to do that. So these are the most exposed roles at NVIDIA, the network engineers and the chips engineers, that I think makes a lot of sense. And then their marketing and account managers aren't as highly exposed. And sorry, I'll skip around with the slides a little bit, but then for the competitive benchmarking piece here, I think it's really, really nice that then we can apply that activity or the role taxonomy from NVIDIA to the rest of their competitors and say, okay, so if we view that through the same lens, where does NVIDIA fall within the exposure score? And they're really, of course, unsurprisingly quite far ahead because they have just such high shares of people doing things that are highly AI-able, especially in comparison to the industry average. I think we get the gist here. I do really want to, just in light of the time, I do just really want to get to the part on people analytics and what does that actually look like for us as a profession in terms of people analytics, because I think it is just so fun. So where does people analytics fall when we do the whole AI exposure and adoption exercise basically for people analytics? And I have pulled up here the 4 large HR specialist functions, so talent intelligence, compensation, talent acquisition, and people analytics. And interestingly, you actually fall sort of in I'll include myself here. We fall onto the bottom place here where only 50% of the activities in people analytics are AI-able, if you will. And I thought at first that was surprising because it is such an analytical function, right? But then when you sort of decompose the job into its actual atomical parts in terms of activities, there's really a lot that does come down to stakeholder, relationship management, presentation. I have a list in a second that breaks that down. So I think this is good to bear in mind that it's not actually such a high share. And then in terms of adoption, it's actually you sort of fall right behind the talent intelligence space. I think talent intelligence has been maybe a little over excited about AI, and they talk about it a lot and they use it a lot. People analytics in that second space. And then looking at the matrix here, I think people analytics falls in such a great place there, where they're in the green, they're ahead of the game. You're adopting AI faster than you'd need to, but you're not sort of talent intelligence where maybe they're overdoing it ever so slightly in terms of the excitement here. On the other hand, maybe your compensation colleagues could be doing slightly more. That's surprising and interesting to see. I think that, of course, they do have such high exposure because it's such an analytical function, and they're not sort of using the tools that could help them do a little bit more. So like I said, when we just sort of do a quick gaze at like the biggest activities in people analytics, the AI augmentable ones are all the analytical ones, right? Analyze data, build reports, develop and deliver solutions. But then the human touch ones, or that's what I'm calling them anyway, are the ones that are, strategize with your clients, maintain stakeholder relationships, present results, everything on basically, the strategization and presenting results that really, it comes down to your unique skills and your team's unique skills that you can focus on more once the left side is automated. You can focus further on the right. So, what is the strategic advantage for people analytics to adopt AI? I think it's exactly what we're saying, right? You can once the augmentable stuff is taken care of, you can focus on your unique skills and hone in on the more consultative pieces, on the ones that require your unique relationships and skills. But I also think you can increase the turnover and velocity of the projects that you work on, right? So if you can augment, the skills on the team, then, just being up to date with the turnover of projects that can be done is a key advantage of using AI in the right way, and thereby you can future-proof your offering. And then I'll leave you with that last piece, I think, with walking before running, just because I think that's something that we've been seeing a lot, especially also in the spaces that have jumped on the AI bandwagon maybe faster than they should have. Is get the foundational pieces right, get the good data, the good foundational just the comparison pieces, and then you can build the fancy solutions and the AI solutions on top of that. Let me leave it here. We don't need backup slides, I hope. But any questions? I'm excited to take questions and hear what you think.
Time for questions, but I do have one that I think, if I'm reading minds, that might be really useful. We think about where you're getting this data from, right? Resumes, job postings. How are you thinking about addressing the elephant in the room of the accuracy and the quality of that, right? First part. And then now with Gen AI, we know that people are using it to actually do their resumes and create job postings. Yeah. And do you see how the taxonomy might need to be tweaked because of that? So,
interesting. Very good question. Yeah. So we do a lot of work on validation of the data and making sure that our data is representative of companies and local labor markets. So we use sample weights, for example, and look at administrative data, 10Ks, all of that good things that are publicly available to make sure we're basically backing that out correctly and making sure the data is representative of local labor markets. The sort of circularity of training data that you mentioned is an interesting problem that I think everybody will be grappling with in terms of what that means. But I think it's becoming easier and easier to identify AI-generated content as well as resumes as well. So detecting those isn't actually very hard. I mean, most of the time you just have to read through them and be like, what's ChatGPT's favorite word? Proliferation or something like that, right?
Yeah. Asterisks, yeah. Awesome.
I think we had one. Do we have time for one question?
Just because LLM is like intrinsically looking at tokens, do you see any instability across regions or in different languages when you run this same approach in resumes in a different language, in job descriptions in a different language?
So we make that easy by translating everything first and then backing.
Cut it to see if the results are different.
Yeah, for sure. So I think once you get then into, I showed you like the general version, but we do it adaptively for, the activity taxonomy can look different for your Indian software engineers as well as your, US-based ones. So the cuts will be different, but that's more driven by the actual activities being different and represented differently as opposed to also how people write about that, of course, but I think it's more content as opposed to, an LLM hurdle.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.